I wasn't supposed to be in Miami. And I definitely wasn't supposed to end up in his bed. My friend Layla had dragged me to this rooftop party, insisting I needed to live a little after my brutal breakup. Just one night, she'd promised. No strings. I'd rolled my eyes, but here I was, clutching a champagne flute, pretending to belong among the glittering elite. That's when I saw him. Tall, imposing, with eyes so blue they looked unreal against his tan skin. He didn't smile, not really. Just watched the crowd with cool detachment, like he owned the oxygen in the room. When our eyes met, something electric passed between us. I should have looked away. Should have run. Instead, I let him approach. "You don't belong here," he said, voice low and rough. Not a question. A statement. I should have been offended, but he wasn't wrong. "Neither do you," I replied, surprising myself. "Everyone's wearing a mask tonight. Yours is just better crafted." His eyebrows raised slightly. The first crack in that perfect facade. By midnight, his hands were tracing fire across my skin in his penthouse suite. I remember thinking this wasn't me. I didn't do one-night stands. But with him, rational thought evaporated. When I fell asleep, his arms were around me, his breath warm against my neck. When I woke up, he was already gone. No note, no number, not even a name, just rumpled sheets and the lingering scent of expensive cologne. I searched the hotel suite in disbelief. How could someone vanish so completely? The ghost in Armani had left nothing behind, not even the memory of his full name. Lucas?
Luca?
He'd murmured it once, between kisses, but the champagne had blurred the edges of my memory. I told myself it didn't matter. It was just one night, a beautiful, reckless mistake I could tuck away and forget. I flew home to Chicago, back to my small apartment and my job at the publishing house, determined to bury the memory. For 3 weeks, I almost convinced myself it worked. Then the nausea started. Morning sickness that stretched into afternoon sickness. Fatigue that dragged at my bones. I blamed stress, blamed bad takeout, blamed anything but the truth staring me in the face. It's impossible, I whispered to myself, counting days on the calendar. But deep down, I knew. Something had changed that night in Miami. Something irreversible. Still, I found myself checking my phone, hoping for a message from a number I didn't have. Scanning crowds for a face I'd only seen in dim lighting. The ghost had vanished completely, leaving no digital footprint, no way to reach him. I was alone with a growing secret. The bathroom light buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving as I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the plastic stick in my trembling hands. 2 pink lines.
Clear as day.
This had to be wrong. I took another test. 2 lines again. A third, premium digital test that cost me nearly $20. Pregnant 3+ weeks. The walls seemed to close in around me. I slid to the cold tile floor, test still clutched in my hand, thoughts spinning wildly. How could this happen? We'd used protection. I was on birth control. The statistical improbability of it made me want to laugh hysterically. Of course this would happen to me. Meet a man once, a nameless, faceless billionaire, and end up pregnant. What cosmic joke was this? I pressed my hands against my still flat stomach, terror and wonder twisting together inside me. There was life growing there. A tiny spark, half me and half him. I had choices, I knew that. But as I sat there, watching the bathroom light flicker, something fierce and protective unfurled in my chest. This baby hadn't asked to be conceived in a one-night stand with a vanished stranger. This baby was mine. Already mine. Whatever came next, whatever impossible hurdles awaited, I would face them. I just didn't know then how high those hurdles would be. I quit my job at the publishing house when the questions about my expanding waistline became too invasive. Found a remote editing position that paid less but didn't require facing curious coworkers. Moved from my trendy apartment to a rundown two-bedroom on the outskirts of the city, where rent was affordable on a single income. College dreams? Shelved indefinitely. Career ambitions? Reconstructed around the reality of single motherhood. I changed my number, partly to escape creditors as medical bills piled up, partly to silence the tiny hope that somehow, impossibly, he might find me. The first ultrasound revealed the biggest shock of all. Twins. 2 tiny heartbeats fluttering on the grainy screen. Congratulations, the technician said, while I lay there, paralyzed with equal parts joy and terror. How was I supposed to raise 2 babies alone? My parents had died years ago in a car accident. My sister lived overseas. Friends drifted away, uncomfortable with my new reality. Each night, I'd lay in bed, hands cradling my growing belly, whispering promises to my unborn children. We would make it.
Somehow.
I'd work harder, sleep less, stretch every dollar until it screamed. I'd become mother and father both. They would never feel the absence of the man who'd helped create them, because they would have all of me. Every piece of my heart. Every ounce of my strength. 3 years passed in a blur of sleepless nights, first steps, and hard-won smiles. My boys, Ethan and Noah, grew into curious, bright-eyed toddlers with dark curls and those unmistakable ice-blue eyes, his eyes. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of him playing and have to look away, the resemblance so striking it felt like being punched in the chest. They had his jawline too, already visible in their chubby faces, and sometimes Ethan would tilt his head exactly the way he had that night in Miami, and I'd have to leave the room to catch my breath. I avoided mirrors when I was with them, afraid to see the 3 of us together. The evidence of that night carved into our very DNA. But they were my world, my everything. Their laughter filled our small apartment, making it feel less like the compromise it was and more like a genuine home. We had our routines: park on Tuesdays if weather permitted, homemade pizza on Fridays, Sunday morning pancakes shaped like dinosaurs or rocket ships. Money was perpetually tight. Daycare costs ate most of my paycheck, and I picked up freelance editing jobs during the precious hours after they fell asleep. But we were making it work. We were stable. Or so I thought, until that ordinary Wednesday afternoon when everything changed again. I was running late for pickup, having stayed an extra 15 minutes to finish editing a manuscript that would pay this month's electric bill. The daycare was housed in an old Victorian home, painted cheerful yellow with a wraparound porch. I rushed up the steps, already rehearsing my apology to Ms. Denise, who gave me meaningful looks whenever I arrived after 5:30. That's when I saw him, standing in the doorway of the toddler room.
Silent.
Watching. Time stopped. The world narrowed to a pinpoint of focus, him. Older than I remembered, with faint lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. More muscular, his tailored suit stretched across broader shoulders. But those eyes, those impossible blue eyes that my boys had inherited, were exactly the same.
Cold.
Assessing. He didn't look surprised to see me. And that's when I knew this wasn't coincidence. He'd found us. Somehow he'd found us. And he knew. Our eyes locked across the colorful room filled with toys and finger paintings. 3 years of anger, fear, and sleepless nights crystallized into a single moment of clarity. My boys were playing at his feet, oblivious to the earthquake happening between the adults in the room. "Mommy," Noah called, breaking the spell. "Look who came today. I want a DNA test." Those were his first words to me after 3 years of silence. Not hello. Not an explanation. Not an apology. We stood in the daycare parking lot, my boys strapped safely in their car seats inside my dented Honda, windows cracked so I could hear if they called for me. "You know they're yours," I spat back, anger making me reckless. "Look at them. Look at their eyes." His jaw tightened. Up close, I could see the faint dusting of silver at his temples that hadn't been there before. "Protocol," he said simply, as if that explained everything. As if protocol justified 3 years of absence. "Who exactly do you think you are?" I demanded, voice shaking. "Lucas Blackwood," he replied, and the name hit me like a physical blow. Lucas Blackwood. Of course. The tech billionaire. The man whose face occasionally graced business magazines. I'd never made the connection because the man I'd met in Miami hadn't seemed real, had existed in some parallel universe of luxury and desire completely separate from my everyday reality. "I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow," he continued, handing me a business card. "Be reasonable, and this can be civilized." Inside the car, one of the boys started crying. His eyes flickered toward the sound, something unreadable crossing his face. "They have my eyes," he admitted quietly. And for just a moment, I saw uncertainty in those icy depths. But then it was gone, replaced by the same cool calculation I remembered from that night. We both already knew what the DNA test would say. The lawyer's office was all gleaming wood and leather, reeking of old money and power. I sat across from a woman with steel gray hair and expertly tailored skirt suit, trying not to fidget in my target dress. The DNA results lay between us on the mahogany desk. 99.9999% probability of paternity. As if there had ever been any doubt. "Mr. Blackwood would like to propose an arrangement," the lawyer, Miranda something, said, sliding a thick document toward me. I didn't touch it. "What kind of arrangement?" "A marriage of convenience. Legal shared custody. Financial security for you and the children." My laugh sounded brittle even to my own ears. "Marriage? He doesn't even know me." "Mr. Blackwood values family structure," she replied smoothly, "and wishes to avoid publicity complications." Translation: Billionaire playboy discovers secret love children, rushes to control the narrative. I was a PR problem to be managed. The door opened, and he walked in, Lucas. Impeccable in another custom suit, expression unreadable. "This isn't about us," he said, voice low and controlled. "It's about them. My sons deserve my name, my protection, my resources." The word sons in his mouth made my chest tighten painfully. "And what do I deserve?" I asked quietly. His eyes met mine, and for a second I glimpsed something like regret. But then it was gone. "Whatever number you write on that paper," he said, nodding toward the contract. "Within reason." The twins needed health insurance. Noah's asthma medications alone cost hundreds monthly. They deserved opportunities one couldn't give them. College funds. Security. "I'll need to read it first," I finally said. His slight nod might have contained respect, or maybe just relief that I wasn't causing a scene. Moving day came too quickly. One moment I was in our small apartment, surrounded by the boys' artwork and our mismatched furniture, The next, I was watching movers pack everything into boxes bound for Lucas Blackwood's Lakeshore mansion. The boys were ecstatic, bouncing on their beds in the massive room Lucas had prepared for them, a room bigger than our entire old apartment, with custom bunk beds shaped like spaceships and walls painted with constellations that glowed in the dark. I stood in the center of my new suite. Because of course we would have separate bedrooms, trying to breathe around the tightness in my chest. Everything gleamed. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, windows that stretched from floor to ceiling offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Staff moved silently through the halls, a housekeeper, a cook, a nanny Lucas had hired without consulting me. Security cameras watched from discreet corners. The closet was already filled with designer clothes in my size. How had he known my measurements?
What else did he know about me?
What else had he discovered during the 3 years he'd been absent? The boys need stability, Lucas had said when I questioned the rushed timeline. The transition should be quick and complete, like ripping off a bandage, like we were just another corporate acquisition. That night, after tucking the boys into their new beds, I stood at the window of my gilded cage, watching lights reflect off the water below. Everything had a price tag. I just hadn't realized mine would be so high. Smile, Lucas murmured, his hand pressing against the small of my back as cameras flashed around us. The boys, dressed in matching blue suits, stood obediently in front of us, their eyes wide at the commotion. Our first public appearance as the perfect Blackwood family. The charity gala was packed with Chicago's elite, all pretending they weren't staring at the notorious Bachelor's instant family. His fingers brushed against my bare skin where my dress dipped low in the back, the touch sending unwelcome electricity down my spine. I hated that my body remembered his. Hated that part of me still responded to him, despite everything. "You're doing great," he whispered, lips brushing my ear for the benefit of the photographers. "Just a little longer." On paper, we'd been married for 3 weeks. In reality, we were strangers sharing custody of the same DNA. The diamond on my finger caught the light, throwing rainbows across the walls. It was massive, ostentatious, a statement piece rather than a symbol of love. Just like our marriage. Later that night, he escorted us home, helped put the overtired boys to bed, even read them a story when they begged. But once they were asleep, he disappeared into his home office without a word. I wandered the vast, silent house, a ghost in a designer gown, wondering if this elegant prison was worth the security it provided my sons. If this hollow performance of family was better than our honest struggle had been. Mornings developed their own rhythm. I'd come downstairs to find Lucas already at the kitchen island, tablet in one hand, coffee in the other, the sunrise painting him in gold through the wall of windows. The boys would race in, always delighted to find him there, as if each morning they expected him to have vanished overnight. And something in that thought cut deep, because they'd inherited my insecurities along with his eyes. Ethan would climb onto the stool beside him, leaning against his arm to peer at whatever he was reading. Noah, more cautious, would hover until Lucas acknowledged him with a nod or, on rare occasions, a ruffle of his hair. They were so hungry for his attention, these boys who'd never known a father's love. And Lucas. Lucas watched them with a scientist's curiosity, noting their mannerisms, their preferences, their developing personalities. But he never fully engaged, never got down on the floor to play, never lost himself in their imaginative games or silly jokes. He provided, protected, observed, but kept himself separate, contained. "Daddy, look," Noah would say, holding up a drawing or a toy discovery. And Lucas would comment appropriately, but something vital was missing in the exchange. Warmth.
Connection.
I caught him once, standing in the doorway of the playroom, watching the boys build a blanket fort. Something naked and vulnerable crossed his face, longing, perhaps, or regret. But when he sensed me watching, the mask slipped back into place. The stranger in my kitchen remained a stranger, despite sharing our home, despite the ring on my finger, despite the children with his eyes and jawline. I smelled her perfume first. Something expensive and floral, lingering on his collar when he came home well after midnight. I pretended to be asleep when he checked on the boys, then slipped into his own room down the hall. It shouldn't have hurt. Ours wasn't a real marriage. We'd never discussed exclusivity in our carefully worded contract. But the knot in my stomach tightened all the same. The late nights became more frequent. Business, he would say when I dared to ask. Or nothing at all, just that impenetrable stare that reminded me of my place in this arrangement. The gossip columns didn't help. Blackwood Spotted with French model screamed one headline, accompanied by blurry photos of him entering a hotel. Trouble in paradise? Asked another when I attended a school function alone. His lawyer called, reminding me of the non-disclosure agreement I'd signed. As if I would air our complicated reality to the press. As if I had any desire to expose my children to that circus. "It's not what you think," Lucas said finally, after I left the tabloid open on his desk. "It never is," I replied, hating the bitter edge in my voice. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Jealous of relationships I had no right to question, dependent on a man I didn't trust, trapped in a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt increasingly hollow within. That night, I lay awake wondering if any of it was worth it, the financial security, the opportunities for my boys, the prestigious address. Whether I'd sold something precious for the illusion of stability. I found the first camera by accident, reaching behind the bookshelf in the playroom for a lost toy. Small, unobtrusive, professional grade. My blood ran cold as I stared at it, trying to convince myself it was just standard security. But why hide it? I started looking more carefully after that. Found another in the kitchen, angled toward the breakfast table where the boys and I spent most of our time. A third in the hallway outside my bedroom. I confronted Lucas in his study, camera in hand. "Explain this." He didn't even look surprised. "Security protocol. You and the boys are high-value targets now." Target, like we were assets to be protected rather than people. I felt sick. "Did you have us under surveillance before? In our apartment? Is that how you found us?" Something flickered across his face. Confirmation enough. "You had no right," I whispered. "They're my children too," he replied coldly. "I have every right to ensure their safety." But it wasn't just cameras. My new phone, a gift from Lucas, had tracking software I couldn't disable. The family driver reported our movements. The staff watched and whispered. Even my emails seemed monitored. Responses to job inquiries mysteriously disappeared. Contacts from my old life went unanswered. We lived in a beautiful cage where privacy was a luxury I apparently hadn't earned. That night, I whispered to the boys during story time. "If Mommy ever says we need to play the hiding game, remember what that means?" They nodded solemnly, too young to understand the weight of my fears, but old enough to keep secrets. The changes were subtle at first. The boys' preschool called to inform me they'd been withdrawn. Lucas had enrolled them in an exclusive private academy across town instead. Their colorful clothes disappeared from the laundry, replaced by miniature button-downs and pressed khakis. Their wild curls, which I'd loved, were cut short during a boys' day out I hadn't been consulted about. They need structure, Lucas explained when I confronted him. Routine. Proper education. You're just overwhelmed by the adjustment period. His tone was reasonable, concerned even, making me question my own reactions. Was I being overprotective? Resistant to positive changes because they weren't my idea? The boys seemed happy enough in their new school, coming home chattering about science experiments and French lessons. But something was being stripped away. Their carefree joy, their individual spirits. They were being molded into perfect Blackwood airs, their rough edges smoothed away.
WH.
And Noah had a meltdown about wearing his scratchy uniform. Lucas handled it with cool efficiency. Blackwood men don't cry over clothes. I watched my sensitive son swallow his tears, straighten his little shoulders, trying so hard to be what his father wanted. Later, I found him in his closet, clutching the worn dinosaur t-shirt I'd bought him for his birthday, the one that had mysteriously disappeared from his drawer. I just wanted to hold it, Mommy, he whispered.
Don't tell Daddy.
Something broke inside me then. The wealth, the privilege, the opportunities. None of it was worth watching my children diminish themselves to earn their father's approval. Why does Daddy have a different house? Ethan asked one night during bath time, his innocent question landing like a punch to my gut.
What do you mean, sweetie?
I asked, keeping my voice light as I shampooed his dark curls. Tommy at school says daddies and mommies sleep in the same room if they love each other. But Daddy has his own room, and sometimes he doesn't come home. Out of the mouths of babes. I struggled to find words that wouldn't lie, but wouldn't burden him either. Every family is different, I finally said. Daddy cares about us very much, but he also has important work. The explanation felt hollow even to me. Noah, quieter than usual, suddenly asked, "Is it because of us? Is Daddy sad we're here?" My heart shattered. No, baby, never think that. Your daddy wanted to find you so much. He's just...
What?
Cold? Controlling? Incapable of normal human connection? Still learning how to be a daddy. Just like I'm still learning to be a mommy. I hugged them both close, water soaking my shirt, not caring. Are you sad, Mommy? Noah whispered against my neck. You look sad sometimes when you think we're not looking. I closed my eyes, wondering when my perceptive 3-year-old had become so attuned to my hidden emotions. Sometimes adults feel complicated feelings, I said carefully. But I am never, ever sad about you two. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Later, I overheard Ethan tell his brother, maybe if we're really good, Daddy will want to stay home more. And I realized that no amount of financial security was worth my children believing they weren't enough exactly as they were. It happened on a rare evening when Lucas was home for dinner. The boys had been put to bed, the house quiet except for the distant sound of waves against the shoreline. I was curled on the living room sofa with a book when he appeared in the doorway, looking uncharacteristically rumpled, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Mind if I join you? He asked, his voice slightly rough. I gestured to the opposite end of the sofa, surprised by the request. For almost an hour, we sat in unexpectedly comfortable silence, me reading, him staring out at the darkened lake. They're good kids, he said suddenly. Smart. Resilient. They are, I agreed cautiously. They get that from you, I think. The compliment, so unexpected, left me momentarily speechless. He shifted closer, reaching for my book to see what had captured my attention. Our fingers brushed. Electricity shot up my arm. That same unwelcome chemistry that had landed us here in the first place. His eyes, when they met mine, held something I hadn't seen since Miami. Heat, yes, but also uncertainty. Vulnerability. His gaze dropped to my lips. For one breathless moment, I thought he might kiss me. Worse, I thought I might let him. The air between us crackled with possibility, with unfinished business. Then his phone rang. The spell broke. He answered, his voice immediately shifting to its usual cool efficiency. By morning, the moment seemed like a dream, especially when I saw a stunning redhead exiting his study, straightening her skirt as she air-kissed his cheek goodbye. Business associate, he explained, not quite meeting my eyes. I just nodded, hating the disappointment that twisted in my chest. The hotel receipt fell from his jacket pocket when I was gathering clothes for dry cleaning, a task I insisted on handling myself, needing to maintain some semblance of normalcy in our bizarre arrangement. One night, the Waldorf Astoria. Champagne. Room service. His corporate card. Another name listed alongside his. Catherine Winters. I shouldn't have looked her up. Shouldn't have tortured myself with images of the gorgeous marketing executive from Lucas's London office. Shouldn't have noticed that her Chicago visit coincided with 3 of his late meetings last week. We weren't real. Our marriage was paper and convenience and custody arrangements. I had no right to feel betrayed. And yet, I left the receipt on his pillow that night. A small, petty gesture that accomplished nothing except letting him know that I knew. He found me in the kitchen after the boys were asleep, receipt in hand. This isn't what it appears to be, he said, voice tight. It never is, I replied, echoing our previous conversation. Look, I don't care who you sleep with. Our arrangement didn't include fidelity. But the words tasted like ash. Catherine is handling the European expansion. These were business meetings. In hotel rooms? At midnight. I laughed, the sound brittle. I'm not stupid, Lucas. His jaw tightened. Contrary to what you seem to believe, I take our arrangement seriously. Our arrangement is about the boys. Not us. There is no us to be faithful to. I turned away, not wanting him to see how much this was actually hurting me. Because somehow, impossibly, I'd begun to care about a man who saw me as nothing more than a convenient solution to an inconvenient problem. The truth came in the form of Clause 23B, buried deep in our marriage contract, a document I'd reviewed but clearly hadn't understood fully. My lawyer, paid for by Lucas, I now realized with bitter clarity, had glossed over it as standard custody language. It wasn't standard, not even close. In the event of separation, Lucas would retain primary physical custody of the children, with me granted only supervised visitation until the boys turned 18. The house, the cars, the lifestyle, all contingent on my appropriate behavior and compliance with family standards. I confronted him in his study, contract clutched in my shaking hands. You never intended this to be equal, did you? This was always about taking them from me. Something cold and alien looked out from those blue eyes. The real Lucas Blackwood, not the carefully controlled version he presented to the world. I protect what's mine, he said simply. My sons belong in my world, with all its advantages. They're not possessions. I was shouting now, beyond caring who heard. They're little boys who need their mother. And they'll have you, he replied calmly. As long as you honor our agreement. The threat hung between us, unspoken but clear. Step out of line and lose everything. Try to leave, and leave without them. The cage door had just slammed shut with devastating finality. I'd signed away my freedom, my autonomy, my rights, all for the illusion of family stability. All because I'd believed, stupidly, that Lucas Blackwood could not possibly be as cold and calculating as he seemed. I'd never been more wrong in my life. "I can give you everything," Lucas said, his voice almost gentle as he poured himself another whiskey. We'd been arguing for hours, going in exhausting circles. Security, luxury, the best education for the boys. A life most people only dream about. I stood by the window, arms wrapped around myself, feeling more alone than I had in the tiny apartment we'd left behind. Everything except freedom. "Freedom is overrated when you're struggling to pay rent," he countered. "I watched you, before I approached at the daycare. You were working yourself to death, taking on extra jobs, skipping meals so they could eat." The confirmation that he'd been surveilling us made me ill. "That was my choice," I whispered. "All of this," I gestured around the opulent room, "comes with your conditions, your rules, your control." "My protection," he corrected. "My resources. My name." "I won't be owned," I said quietly. "And I won't let you turn our sons into cold, calculating replicas of their father." Something flashed across his face. Pain, maybe, or anger. He set down his glass with deliberate care. "You think I'm cold? I've given you everything. Everything except the one thing that matters. Respect." I met his gaze steadily. "I'd rather struggle in freedom than live in a golden cage. I'd rather our boys learn integrity from poverty than entitlement from wealth." For the first time since I'd known him, Lucas Blackwood looked genuinely surprised. As if it had never occurred to him that his billions might not be enough to buy compliance. As if no one had ever stood up to him before. "Think carefully about your next move," he said finally. "There's a lot at stake." That night, after checking that the boys were sound asleep, I began quietly gathering essentials. Birth certificates hidden in my pillowcase. A few precious photos. The emergency cash I'd been squirreling away, bill by bill. We couldn't take much. Would have to disappear quickly before he realized what I'd done. Before his lawyers and private investigators and security teams could track us down. I'd rather run forever than watch my children slowly transform into miniature versions of their father. Privileged, cold, seeing the world as something to be owned and controlled rather than experienced and loved. A floorboard creaked, and I whirled around to find Lucas standing in my doorway. How long had he been watching? His face revealed nothing, but something about the set of his shoulders sent a chill down my spine. Had he guessed? Did he know? He moved into the room with predatory grace, stopping just close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You should know," he said conversationally, "that I always win. Whatever game you think you're playing, I've already calculated every possible move." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture oddly intimate. I forced myself not to flinch. "Sweet dreams," he murmured, turning to leave. At the doorway, he paused, glancing back at me over his shoulder. A slow, confident smile spread across his face, making him look suddenly like the man I'd met that night in Miami. Dangerous, magnetic, unstoppable. "You think this is over?" he asked softly. "This was just the first act. Don't miss part 2 coming later today. Will she escape with her twins? Is Lucas really the villain he seems to be? The truth will shock you. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who love intense emotional stories. Drop a comment below with what you think will happen next. I read every single one. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.
Red heart.